When an avoidant and their partner stop talking the hidden truth, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like the person you love the most is slipping away? You try to reach them, but they retreat. You push harder, but they go silent. And before you know it, the space between you is filled with silence, pain, and confusion. This isn't just about communication. It's about survival instincts. One person is avoiding pain, the other is chasing connection. But what no one tells you is that both are fighting the same war, just in different ways. Listen to me carefully. The avoidants don't withdraw because they care so much the connection feels dangerous. The closer you get, the more their nervous system says run, but their partner, they're wired differently. Their system screams, come closer, prove you, won't leave me. And here's the brutal truth. If neither of you understands this dynamic, you're not just in a rough patch, you're in a cycle of silent destruction. So how do you break free? You stop reacting and you start understanding. If you're the avoidant, your greatest fear is losing yourself in the relationship. But what if I told you that true love doesn't consume you, it expands you? And if you're the partner chasing connection, listen, your worth isn't determined by how much someone opens up to you. Real love is about giving space and presence at the same time. Today, I challenge you, stop taking distance personally and start seeing it as a signal. Instead of reacting, pause. Instead of chasing, ground yourself. Instead of running, lean in just a little. Because when you change the pattern, you change the relationship. And when you change the relationship, you change your life. The silence isn't rejection, it's an opportunity. And what you do with it, that's your choice. Avoidants don't withdraw because they don't care. They withdraw because they care too much. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in relationships. When an avoidant partner pulls away, it often looks like indifference, coldness, or even abandonment. Their partner, usually someone with a more anxious attachment style, experiences this withdrawal as a deep rejection. It triggers fear, insecurity, and often a desperate need to reconnect. But what's really happening beneath the surface is far more complex. Avoidants are not shutting down because they feel nothing. They're shutting down because they feel everything. For an avoidant, closeness can be overwhelming. From the outside, it might appear that they are simply uninterested in emotional depth, but internally, it's a different story. Emotional intimacy can feel like a loss of autonomy, a threat to their personal space, or even a direct challenge to their survival instincts. They aren't thinking about this consciously. It's a deeply ingrained response, often formed in childhood. Many avoidants grew up in environments where expressing emotions wasn't safe, where vulnerability was met with neglect, punishment, or conditional love. As a result, they learned that relying on others for emotional support was risky, and over time, they became experts at self-sufficiency. The moment an avoidant feels someone getting too close, their nervous system activates a primal response. It's not logic driving them, it's instinct. That instinct tells them that too much. Closeness is dangerous, that opening up could lead to losing themselves or being hurt. They may not even recognize this consciously, but their behaviors reflect it. They pull away not because they want to hurt their partner, but because their body is screaming at them to retreat. This reaction isn't about a lack of love, it's about protection. At the same time, their partner is experiencing the exact opposite reaction. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by closeness, they feel desperate for it. The more the avoidant withdraws, the more their partner leans in, trying to reconnect, trying to get answers, trying to feel reassured. To the avoidant, this can feel like pressure. The more they are pursued, the stronger their need to escape. It becomes a vicious cycle. One partner withdraws to feel safe, the other chases to feel secure, and neither realizes that they're both reacting out of fear. The irony is that avoidants often love deeply. They feel emotions intensely, but they don't always have the tools to express them in a way that reassures their partner. Many times they express love through actions rather than words. They might show they care by being reliable, providing for their partner, or offering practical help. But when it comes to emotional vulnerability, they struggle. Not because they don't want to connect, but because connection itself feels like a battlefield. If an avoidant truly didn't care, they wouldn't feel the need to withdraw in the first place. Indifference doesn't cause a reaction, fear does. And fear only exists when something matters. If they didn't care, they wouldn't feel the pressure, the overwhelm, or the urge to escape. The fact that they feel those things means that the relationship is important to them. But caring deeply while simultaneously fearing closeness creates a conflict they don't always know how to navigate. For the partner of an avoidant, understanding this can be a game changer. Instead of seeing withdrawal as rejection, it helps to see it as a self-protection mechanism. It's not about them being unloving, it's about them trying to manage emotions they were never taught how to handle. This doesn't mean their behavior is excusable or that the other partner should tolerate emotional distance indefinitely, but it does mean that taking withdrawal personally will only add more pain to the situation. Breaking this cycle starts with awareness. When both partners understand that avoidance isn't about a lack of love, but rather about fear, the dynamic begins to shift. Instead of Reacting with panic, the partner seeking connection can pause, ground themselves, and recognize that chasing will only push their partner further away. Instead of feeling suffocated, the avoidant can start to recognize that intimacy doesn't have to mean losing themselves. The relationship doesn't have to be a battlefield. It can be a place of healing, but that healing starts with understanding. The more one partner chases, the more the other feels the need to escape. This cycle plays out in countless relationships, often leaving both partners feeling frustrated, misunderstood, and emotionally exhausted. One person desperately seeks connection while the other pulls away, feeling overwhelmed. Neither behavior is random. Both are instinctive responses that have been shaped by past experiences, childhood attachments, and deep-seated fears. At its core, this dynamic is a survival mechanism. The partner who chases often has an anxious attachment style, meaning they crave closeness and reassurance. When they sense distance, their nervous system interprets it as a threat. It triggers a sense of abandonment, making them feel as if they are losing the connection they need to feel safe. This is not just emotional, it's physiological. The brain releases stress hormones, causing them to act with urgency. They reach out, demand answers, ask for reassurance, and sometimes even provoke a response, anything to reestablish the bond. But to the avoidant partner, this pursuit feels suffocating. The avoidant, who is wired for independence and self-reliance, experiences closeness differently. While intimacy may feel comforting for a moment, prolonged emotional intensity begins to feel overwhelming. Unlike the anxious partner whose system craves closeness for safety, the avoidant's nervous system sees closeness as a potential loss of autonomy. Their response is to create space, to pull away so they can regain a sense of control. But the more they retreat, the more desperate their partner becomes, escalating the chase. This creates a loop where each person's reaction reinforces the other's fears. The anxious partner is not chasing for the sake of control. They are chasing because they feel disconnected and fearful. But the avoidant partner is not running because they don't care. They are running because the emotional intensity feels unbearable. Both partners are acting out of their own pain, yet neither can see the other's perspective in the moment. The anxious partner interprets withdrawal as rejection, assuming their partner doesn't love them or is losing interest. The avoidant partner sees pursuit as pressure, making them feel inadequate or incapable of providing the emotional depth being demanded of them. This dynamic is exhausting because it constantly triggers both partners' deepest fears. The anxious partner fears being abandoned, and the avoidant partner fears being consumed. The more one acts on their fear, the more the other feels theirs intensify. This isn't about logic. It's about emotional conditioning. Many people who fall into this pattern have experienced similar dynamics in childhood. Maybe the anxious partner had caregivers who were inconsistent, sometimes available and sometimes distant, making them hyper-aware of any sign of emotional withdrawal. Maybe the avoidant partner grew up in an environment where emotions were not acknowledged, teaching them that closeness was either dangerous or unnecessary. These early experiences shape how people react in relationships, even when they don't realize it. What makes this cycle so painful is that both partners genuinely want love and connection. The anxious partner doesn't want to push their loved one away. They just want to feel valued. The avoidant partner doesn't want to hurt the person they care about. They just want to feel emotionally safe. But because their needs seem opposite, they struggle to meet in the middle. The harder the anxious partner tries to pull the avoidant close, the more the avoidant feels like they have no choice but to retreat. Breaking this cycle requires awareness from both sides. The anxious partner must learn that chasing will not bring the connection they seek. Instead of reacting out of fear, they need to pause, self-soothe, and recognize that their worth is not determined by how quickly their partner responds. The avoidant partner, on the other hand, must recognize that withdrawal is not the only way to maintain emotional balance. Instead of shutting down, they need to communicate their need for space in a way that reassures their partner rather than triggering more fear. This pattern doesn't change overnight, but the first step is understanding that neither partner is the enemy. The chase isn't about control, and the withdrawal isn't about rejection. It's a cycle born out of fear, and only by recognizing that fear can both partners begin to build a relationship where connection doesn't have to feel like a battle. This isn't just a relationship problem, it's a nervous system response. Many people assume that when an avoidant partner pulls away or when an anxious partner chases, it's a conscious choice, but in reality, these behaviors are deeply wired into the nervous system. They are not just emotional reactions, they are physiological responses triggered by stress, fear, and past experiences. When conflict or emotional intensity arises in a relationship, each partner's nervous system reacts based on how they have learned to handle connection and perceived threats. The anxious partner, who fears abandonment, experiences emotional distance as danger. Their brain activates a fight or flight response, flooding their body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This makes them feel an urgent need to reconnect. They might call repeatedly, send long messages, ask for reassurance, or push for a conversation, anything to ease the sense of panic inside them. But this reaction is not just about emotions, it is their nervous system's way of trying to restore safety. On the other side, The avoidant partner has a completely different response. Their nervous system is wired to perceive too much emotional intensity as overwhelming. Instead of seeing closeness as comfort, their body reacts as if they are being cornered. This is often because they learned early in life that emotional dependence was either unsafe or unhelpful. When their partner reaches for connection, their brain interprets it as pressure, and their nervous system responds by shutting down. Their heart rate may slow, their body may feel numb, and they may feel an intense need to withdraw, avoid the conversation, or focus on something else to regain their sense of control. This is not a choice. It is a physiological response that happens automatically. Just as a person instinctively pulls their hand away from a hot stove, an avoidant pulls away from emotional intensity. And just as a drowning person instinctively reaches for anything to stay afloat, an anxious partner clings to the relationship to feel safe, neither reaction is rational in the moment. It is purely survival-based. Understanding this nervous system dynamic is crucial because it helps both partners see that their reactions are not personal attacks. The anxious partner is not trying to suffocate their avoidant partner. They are trying to calm their own inner panic. The avoidant partner is not withdrawing because they don't care. They are trying to protect themselves from feeling emotionally overwhelmed. Both are trying to regulate their nervous systems, but they do it in opposite ways. The problem is that these instinctive responses reinforce each other. The more the anxious partner reaches out, the more the avoidant partner feels the need to retreat. The more the avoidant partner pulls away, the more the anxious partner feels abandoned. It becomes a vicious cycle, not because either partner wants it, but because their nervous systems are reacting automatically. This explains why logical conversations often fail to solve the issue. The anxious partner may try to explain why they need reassurance, and the avoidant partner may insist they just need space, but their nervous systems are already locked into a pattern that goes beyond words. In those moments, reasoning alone doesn't work because their bodies are in a stress response. Breaking this cycle starts with nervous system awareness. The anxious partner needs to recognize that their urge to chase is a sign of inner distress, not proof that their partner is abandoning them. Learning to self-soothe through deep breathing, mindfulness, or grounding techniques can help them regulate their emotions without needing an immediate response from their partner. The avoidant partner, on the other hand, needs to realize that their need to withdraw is not always necessary for survival. Instead of shutting down completely, they can learn to communicate their need for space in a way that reassures their partner rather than triggering fear. When both partners understand that their reactions are driven by nervous system responses, they can start to change their patterns. They can pause before reacting, recognize what is happening in their bodies, and make conscious choices rather than acting out of automatic fear. This is not just about fixing a relationship. It is about rewiring the way the body responds to connection and conflict. And when that happens, relationships stop feeling like a battle for survival and start becoming a place of true safety and understanding. True love doesn't consume, it expands both individuals. Many people enter relationships believing that love means merging completely with another person, that true intimacy requires giving everything, and that the ultimate goal is to become one. While deep connection is essential, love that consumes rather than expands eventually suffocates both partners. When love is healthy, it allows both individuals to grow rather than shrink under the weight of the relationship. For avoidant partners, the fear of being consumed is often at the core of their struggles with intimacy. They may have learned early in life that relationships come with expectations they can't meet, or that closeness leads to a loss of independence. They might associate love with obligation, feeling as though being in a relationship means constantly giving up parts of themselves. This fear isn't about not wanting love, it's about wanting love without losing their identity. When a relationship starts feeling like a demand instead of a choice, their nervous system reacts by pulling away. On the other side, the anxious partner often sees closeness as the ultimate proof of love. They may believe that if two people truly love each other, they should naturally want to spend all their time together, share every thought, and have no space between them. When their partner seeks independence, they perceive it as distance or disinterest. This belief makes them chase harder, hoping that if they can get close enough, their partner will finally feel safe enough to stay. But in trying to create connection, they unknowingly apply pressure, reinforcing the avoidant partner's fear of being consumed. Both partners are seeking love, but their definitions of it differ. One equates love with closeness, while the other equates love with freedom. When these perspectives clash, love starts feeling like a battle rather than a source of growth. The anxious partner may feel unloved and unwanted, while the avoidant partner feels trapped and suffocated. Neither realizes that love doesn't require sacrificing independence or constant reassurance. It requires balance. A love that expands both people creates space for individuality while maintaining connection. It is a relationship where both partners feel safe enough to be themselves without fear of losing the other. The anxious partner learns that love isn't proven by closeness alone. It's shown in consistency, trust, and the ability to stand strong without constant validation. The avoidant partner learns that love doesn't mean losing themselves. It means having a safe place to return to without feeling trapped. One of the most powerful shifts in a relationship happens when both partners realize they don't have to prove their love by meeting extreme expectations. The anxious partner doesn't have to hold on so tightly, and the avoidant partner doesn't have to run. When love expands, it allows for both connection and space. It removes the pressure to be everything for each other, and instead encourages both individuals to grow side. The healthiest relationships are not those where two people become one, but where two people support each other in becoming their best selves. This means allowing space for personal growth, respecting each other's need for solitude or social interaction, and understanding that time apart doesn't diminish love, it strengthens it. It means trusting that connection doesn't disappear just because there is distance. Many people fear that creating space in a relationship will cause them to drift apart, but in reality, the opposite is often true. When love is built on the foundation of trust rather than fear, space allows for deeper appreciation. The anxious partner begins to feel secure in the relationship without needing constant reassurance, and the avoidant partner starts to experience closeness without feeling overwhelmed. Instead of love being a source of pressure, it becomes a source of freedom. Love should never feel like a loss of self. It should feel like an expansion of trust, of security, of personal growth. It should be a place where both partners feel safe enough to be fully themselves, knowing that true connection doesn't require suffocation or withdrawal. When love expands instead of consumes, it transforms relationships into something sustainable, fulfilling, and deeply connected. Chasing connection won't fill the void. Learning to self-regulate will. Many people believe that if they can just get closer to their partner, if they can just get more reassurance, more time, more attention, then they will finally feel secure. But the truth is, no amount of external validation can ever fully heal an internal wound. When someone relies on another person to regulate their emotions, they place the weight of their emotional stability on something outside of their control. And that is why, no matter how much closeness they get, it never feels like enough. For those with an anxious attachment style, the fear of abandonment is deeply wired into their nervous system. When they sense distance from their partner, whether it's emotional withdrawal, a delayed text message, or even just a moment of quiet, they experience a wave of anxiety. Their brain interprets it as danger, triggering a stress response that says something is wrong, you need to fix this. This leads to behaviors like over-texting, over-explaining, asking for reassurance, or even picking fights just to get a reaction. The goal isn't to create conflict. The goal is to reconnect and make sure the relationship is still intact. But the irony is that the harder they chase, the more it pushes their partner away. This is especially true when they are in a relationship with an avoidant person who responds to pressure by withdrawing even further. The anxious partner feels more rejected, which makes them chase harder, which makes the avoidant partner feel even more overwhelmed. This cycle can continue indefinitely, leaving both people exhausted and disconnected. The problem is that chasing connection is a temporary fix. Even if the anxious partner gets the reassurance they are looking for in the moment, the relief doesn't last. Eventually, the fear comes back. Something else will trigger insecurity, and the cycle will start all over again. This is because the real issue isn't a lack of connection, it's an inability to self-regulate emotions. Instead of looking to a partner to create a sense of inner peace, the anxious partner must learn to create it within themselves. Self-regulation means being able to soothe your own emotions without needing someone else to do it for you. It means recognizing when anxiety is taking over and having the tools to calm yourself down. Instead of sending that anxious text, instead of seeking immediate reassurance, it means pausing and asking, what am I really afraid of? Is this fear based on reality, or is it based on my past experiences? It means learning how to breathe through the discomfort, how to sit with uncertainty without panicking, and how to trust that connection isn't something that disappears just because there is a moment of distance. One of the biggest breakthroughs comes when someone realizes that their worth is not determined by how quickly their partner responds, how much attention they receive, or how often their partner reassures them. Their worth is inherent. No external relationship can give them the security they need if they don't already have it within themselves. This doesn't mean that relationships shouldn't be a source of comfort. Healthy relationships do provide reassurance, love, and connection. But when one person relies entirely on their partner for emotional stability, it creates pressure that no relationship can sustain. True emotional security comes from within. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, whether their partner is near or far, responsive or distant, they are still whole. Building self-regulation takes time, but it starts with awareness. When anxiety rises, instead of reacting impulsively, it's about learning to slow down, taking deep breaths, moving the body, writing down thoughts instead of immediately acting on them, finding other sources of comfort, friends, creative outlets, mindfulness practices. The more a person builds their own internal sense of safety, the less they will need to chase it externally. The shift is powerful. When someone stops looking to their partner to fix their emotions and starts learning to self-regulate, everything changes. They no longer feel desperate for validation. They no longer feel like their world will crumble if there is a moment of silence. Instead of grasping for love, they become a source of stability within themselves. And ironically, this shift often brings partners closer together because love flourishes best when it is given freely, not when it is demanded out of fear. Silence in a relationship isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of unspoken fears, unmet needs, and unresolved wounds. When two people stop talking, it rarely happens overnight. It is the result of repeated misunderstandings, emotional injuries that were never healed, and a growing sense of exhaustion. Many assume that silence means indifference, but in reality, it often means the opposite. Silence is full of meaning, carries pain, resentment, confusion, and sometimes even love that no longer knows how to express itself. For avoidance, silence can feel like safety. When conversations become emotionally charged, when they feel pressure to be vulnerable or to meet expectations they're not sure they can handle, retreating into silence feels like the best option. It allows them to regain a sense of control, to avoid saying the wrong thing, and to protect themselves from emotional overwhelm. But what they don't realize is that their silence is not neutral. It is an action, and to their partner, it speaks louder than any words ever could. For their partner, especially if they have an anxious attachment style, silence feels like abandonment. It confirms their deepest fear. I am alone in this relationship. I don't matter. My emotions are too much. While the avoidant withdraws to protect themselves, their partner experiences this as rejection. Instead of seeing the silence as a coping mechanism, they see it as proof that they are unimportant, that love is slipping away. This triggers an intense need to break through the silence, to push for conversation, to demand answers. But the more they push, the more the avoidant partner feels overwhelmed, reinforcing their need to shut down. This cycle becomes a silent war where both people feel misunderstood. The avoidant partner is trying to create space to feel safe, while the anxious partner is trying to close the gap to feel secure. Neither realizes that they are reacting to fear, not reality. The avoidant fears losing themselves, while the anxious partner fears losing the relationship. And the silence grows between them, turning into resentment, distance, and eventually emotional detachment. What makes this so damaging is that both partners often assume the worst about each other. The anxious partner believes the avoidant doesn't care, while the avoidant believes the anxious partner will never be satisfied. Neither of these beliefs is true. But when silence replaces communication, there is no way to correct the assumptions. Instead, both people retreat into their own interpretations, convinced that they are alone in their pain. Breaking the silence requires more than just talking. It requires understanding. The avoidant partner must recognize that silence does not solve problems, it only deepens the wounds. While space can be healthy, complete emotional withdrawal is not. Instead of shutting down, they can practice communicating their need for space in a way that reassures their partner rather than triggering fear. A simple, I need some time to process, but care about you, and we will talk about this, can change everything. The anxious partner, on the other hand, must learn that silence is not necessarily a rejection. Just because their partner withdraws doesn't mean they have stopped loving them. Instead of seeing silence as proof of abandonment, they can reframe it as a signal that their partner is overwhelmed. This shift and give space without assuming the worst. Silence doesn't have to be the end of connection. When both partners understand what it truly means, they can begin to break the cycle. The avoidant learns to stay present without feeling trapped, and the anxious partner learns to find security within themselves rather than demanding it externally. The moment both people realize that their silence is not empty, that it is filled with the things they are too afraid to say, they can finally begin to speak in a way that heals instead of divides. Healing doesn't happen when one partner changes. It happens when both partners understand their patterns and take responsibility for their part in the cycle. Many people believe that if only their partner would act differently, the relationship would improve. The anxious partner may think, if only they would stop pulling away, I would feel secure. The avoidant partner may think, if only they would stop pressuring me, I would feel comfortable staying close. But real healing doesn't come from waiting for the other person to change. It comes from recognizing how each person contributes to the cycle and deciding to break it together. In relationships where one person has an anxious attachment and the other has an avoidant attachment, the same pattern repeats over and over. The anxious partner seeks connection, the avoidant partner pulls away, and both feel misunderstood. Neither behavior exists in isolation. They feed off each other. The anxious partner doesn't chase for no reason. They chase because their partner withdraws. The avoidant partner doesn't retreat for no reason. They retreat because they feel overwhelmed by the pursuit. Both reactions are survival mechanisms, but when they play out together, they create a painful loop of distance and desperation. Understanding this cycle is the first step toward healing. When both partners recognize that their reactions are not random, but deeply wired responses to fear, they can begin to approach the relationship differently. Instead of blaming each other, they can start asking, what am I bringing to this cycle? How can I change my response to create a different outcome? Healing happens when both people take responsibility for their patterns and commit to breaking them. For the anxious partner, this means learning to pause before reacting. Instead of reaching out impulsively when they feel insecure, they can take a step back and ask themselves, what am I afraid of? Is this fear based on reality or is it based on past wounds? They can practice self-soothing techniques such as deep breathing, journaling, or engaging in activities that bring them comfort. The goal is not to suppress their emotions, but to learn how to process them in a way that doesn't rely entirely on their partner's response. When the anxious partner stops chasing out of fear, the avoidant partner no longer feels the same pressure to run. For the avoidant partner, healing means staying present even when they feel overwhelmed. Instead of withdrawing completely, they can practice small steps toward connection. This could mean responding with reassurance rather than silence, expressing their need for space in a way that doesn't create more distance, or simply acknowledging their partner's emotions rather than shutting down. The avoidant partner doesn't have to force themselves into emotional intensity, but they do need to recognize that disappearing isn't the solution. When the avoidant partner learns to stay instead of retreat, the anxious partner begins to feel secure without needing to chase. Healing doesn't mean that either person has to become someone they are not. The anxious partner doesn't need to suppress their need for connection. And the avoidant partner doesn't need to force themselves into constant closeness. True healing happens when both partners learn to regulate their emotions, communicate their needs without fear, and create a relationship where both security and independence can exist at the same time. When both partners take responsibility for their part in the cycle, the relationship transforms. The anxious partner no longer feels desperate for validation because they have learned to self-soothe. The avoidant partner no longer feels the need to withdraw because they have learned that connection doesn't mean losing themselves. Instead of repeating the same painful patterns, they create a new dynamic, one built on understanding, trust, and mutual respect. Healing is not about one person changing for the other, it is about both. Partners recognizing their patterns, taking responsibility for their reactions, and making conscious choices that lead to a healthier, more balanced relationship. Only then can love become something that strengthens rather than drains, something that provides both connection and freedom, something that lasts. In the end, relationships are not about winning or losing, chasing or withdrawing. They are about understanding. When an avoidant and their partner stop talking, it's not just silence. It's a reflection of their fears, their wounds, and their deepest longings for love and safety. But healing is possible when both partners recognize their patterns, take responsibility for their emotions, and commit to breaking the cycle together. Love is not about suffocation, nor is it about escape. It is about balance, trust, and the courage to stay present even when it feels uncomfortable. When both people learn to communicate without fear, to hold space for each other's needs without losing themselves, and to replace reaction with conscious choice, the relationship transforms. And that's when true connection happens, not from forcing closeness or avoiding vulnerability, but from choosing every day to show up with understanding, patience, and love. Thank you for being here, for listening, and most importantly, for being willing to do the work to build deeper, healthier relationships.